Hello, welcome back to How to D&D. Today it's all about Wave Echo Cave and the Lost Mine of Phandelver. For those of you who have not been part of this particular live stream, I usually go over everything as a slideshow. I use a presentation first and cover all the things I think you might need to know. And then I open up for Q&A or questions and answers, and also I do some demonstration with maps, miniatures and dice. I'm going to put up a poll right now. I'm just making sure that my screen and everything is catching up, and it looks like it's all working fine and it's all beaming through in 4K, which is good. Now I haven't actually made any significant changes to this presentation. What I have intended to do is to try to cover something slightly different every single time I do it, and so you can expect that sort of thing to definitely likely to happen. And to make sure that my camera is working properly as well on my head cam, because we'll probably use the head cam shot as well at some point, and it looks like it is working pretty well. So my suggestion is take part in the poll, post up your questions. This is a subscriber chat only, so you need to be subscribed for at least 20 minutes to be able to comment, and this is to keep the bots out, and also obviously to get you onto the channel so that you come and watch the rest of the program that I run. That's very much part of the whole process. So get yourself some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable. I'll do my best not to croak too much, and we'll work our way through this. How's it going, Dungeons and Chronics? How are you doing? Well, we'll see. Things are getting more complicated as the year progresses, but so far we seem to be doing all right. I'm hoping that doesn't get too complicated, because it's definitely possible. Anyway, I think I'm just about ready, so hopefully everybody else is too. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, because I usually do talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Today it's all about the Lost Mine of Phandelver, the Dungeon Master tutorial. I do this every single week. This is Lesson 6, Wave Echo Cave, Part 1, which means because Wave Echo Cave is so large, there is a Part 2. So what will I be covering today? Usually there is a process that I have, and I have an overview. Finding Wave Echo Cave, I'm going to talk about that. The Wandering Monster Table, the Cave Entrance, the Rock Seeker Campsite, the Mine Tunnels, with that lurking oak jelly, because that's going to come into play potentially. The old entrance has some hungry sturges, so I'll talk about that. The old guard room with the skeleton horde that you might be worried about. The assayers office, the south barracks, the ruined storeroom, the fungi cavern, and of course we have the great cavern and the dark pool. All of these I will be discussing today. Now, if I'm not discussing something that is in Wave Echo Cave, it's because it's part of Part 2. I will explain everything. The intention is to give you information you don't already have, so I won't really try to go over stuff that's already in the adventure. I will demonstrate as much as I possibly can in the time we have, and I would like you to participate by asking questions, but also potentially rolling dice and playing along with me. So we'll see how that goes. D&D Beyond has the Lost Mine of Phandelver, the adventure for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. It's available on D&D Beyond for free. You can download this thing, you get the entire adventure. It doesn't cost you anything to sign up to D&D Beyond. On top of that, you get all of the high resolution maps for the Dungeon Master and the player, and you also get all of the artwork, which is quite nice. You will get the stat blocks, even the specific stat blocks for this adventure as well. So you can use everything that you need off D&D Beyond if you wanted to. Wave Echo Cave, as you can see, is a relatively large location. For a modern dungeon or a modern location, this has a lot of different areas. 20 in fact. And we'll only be covering half of those. I would say to you, for those of you who are going to ask me this question, because I always get this question asked of me, Fred, how do you get that high resolution map printed out? How do you print out that map? Well, first off, I want to make it clear that the map that I have printed out is not to scale. Okay, the scale, every square is 10 feet, which means that each square has to represent 4 miniatures standing in it. It's a very large map. It would be 8 foot by 6 foot if you print this to scale. And there's no print shop that can do that. not unless you cut it into parts. You would have to cut it into 6 pieces. So I have only printed mine onto an A0 piece of paper. Basically, I took it to a print shop and I took the high resolution map with me for the player, and I asked them to print it out and fit it to the paper without stretching it to an A0 page. That's it, but it's not to scale. It would be impractical, and I don't recommend doing it, but if you must give it a go, then you will have a whole lot of problems. You will have to cut it up into at least 6 pieces and print it out probably onto A1 paper. Okay, the first topic for today. Finding Wave Echo Cave. So there are a couple of ways that the player characters can go about finding Wave Echo Cave. The first one is Gundren Rockseeker's map to Wave Echo Cave, which you will find the information about on page 41. If you get hold of that map, which you can, it will take you to Wave Echo Cave. Also, of course, Gundren Rockseeker knows how to get to Wave Echo Cave because he made the map. All of the doppelgangers know the location of Wave Echo Cave because they actually work for Nesnar the Black Spider. King Groll has seen the map to Wave Echo Cave and knows how to get there. Okay, so if you want to get to the cave, ask King Groll. You might not be able to do that unless you knock him out and interrogate him and capture him. But yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Redolf the Druid can take the party to Wave Echo Cave for a favour. Unfortunately, the favour he will have is deal with the dragon. Dealing with a dragon is not an easy task, but if the party are able to do so, this is another way to get them to Wave Echo Cave. Agatha the Banshee knows the location to Wave Echo Cave, but the player characters need to have a valuable piece of jewellery to convince her to answer the question. And of course, on top of that, if they're going to use the original piece of jewellery they were given to take to Agatha, they will fail their original quest. But there are other pieces of jewellery they could use within the adventure. The bugbears in the Red Brand hideout work for Nesnar, which means it follows that they would also know where to go to find Wave Echo Cave. And then Clark the bugbear in Cragmore hideout has probably also seen the map to Wave Echo Cave because he's one of the people involved in capturing Gundren, and he would have probably perused the map before passing it on with Gundren to King Groll. So a lot of different possibilities with regard to how to get them to the right location. Wandering Monster Table. I wanted to have a little discussion around the Wandering Monster Table. This table is well and truly too big. I don't think it is a Wandering Monster Table, more of a encounter table. So there's a difference. And also the Wandering Monster Table doesn't make a lot of sense. I would suggest to you to actually remove some of the monsters from the Wandering Monster Table if you wind up using them. Remove the Grick, remove the zombies, remove the skeletons, because these monsters don't really wander. They're not going to wander in a location like this. A Grick would not wander around in a location occupied by undead. That's actually not very plausible. Now, zombies and skeletons, although it makes sense that they are being undead existing here, they don't wander. They just stand still and wait for something to come along, unless they have been pre-programmed. And so I would suggest to you that don't bother having them as a wandering monster either. Okay? The ghoul is potentially the best or better wandering monster to use for Wave Echo Cave. So one type of monster would probably be more than adequate. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what about the bugbears? You know, there's a few bugbears in this location. Would they not also be able to wander around because they would be Nesnar's troops? Well, not really, because Nesnar doesn't control the entire location. So you can't patrol a location that you don't actually fully control. You know, so it doesn't make sense. The only patrol you're probably going to be dealing with are things that are in the vicinity of undead. And I would suggest ghouls are probably better. If you must put more in, the zombies and the skeletons. But I wouldn't bother with them myself. If the player characters take a short or a long rest inside Wave Echo Cave, then select or roll randomly for a wandering monster without rolling a d20 dice. Like there's a mechanic for rolling a 20-sided dice to determine if they get a wandering monster. There's some rules around how to do that in the adventure. I would ignore all that. The only time you bother with a wandering monster is if your player characters are foolish enough to take a short rest or a long rest inside Wave Echo Cave without using the safe location. There is a safe location in here, and that's probably the only time that you would roll up a wandering monster in this place. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Next, let's do some locations. Let's go over the various locations we have here. Location 1, the cave entrance. Well, first off, if Gundren is with the party, he can play. You can play him as being quite emotional and wanting to take back Théoden, his body, back to town, or Gundren might decide that it's more important to continue on and try and rescue Nundro and see if Nundro is still with us. So you can play him either way, whether he takes the body of his dead brother back or whether he continues on with a group to rescue Nundro. Either one would be a viable option. What happens if the characters don't want to take the dead dwarves' boots of striding and springing? Because Théoden actually is wearing a pair of magical boots. Now, they might do this because it's out of respect to Gundren and his murdered brother. They might also decide not to do that because Gundren's with them and it would be in bad taste. This is actually fine. If the players decide to do something like this, but you really want them to have that magic item, I don't want you to freak out about this. This is fine because the Rockseeker brothers, if they're still alive, can give the party that item later on. If Gundren is with them, he's probably going to say, it's all right, take the boots off and give it to whoever wants it. He may not wear them himself because he might decide it might be more useful for somebody else. It might be on temporary loan or it might be a permanent gift. It may be a reward for helping him rescue his brother. Like that's how you could put it. Now, even if they don't wind up with the boots of springing at the end of this location, Wave Echo Cave, if their Rockseeker brothers still alive, they're going to hand it over to them. Okay, it's part of the reward of helping them out. What are the dwarven supplies in this location? There's talk about there being a camp and stuff there, but they don't really spell out exactly what's there. So what I've done is I've saved you a whole lot of time and I've made a list. Here's my list. You can use everything here or you can ignore all of it or take just some of it. 4 sacks of flour, 2 bags of salt, 4 casks of salted meat or beef, 3 bull's eye lanterns, 6 flasks of lamp oil, 3 pickaxes, 3 shovels, an abacus, 4 empty barrels, 3 bedrolls, 4 buckets, a box of 20 candles, a box of 10 pieces of chalk, 4 lengths of 50-foot hemp rope, 2 crowbars, a grappling hook, 3 hammers, 2 sledgehammers, a hunting trap, a mess kit, a box of 10 pitons, a 10-foot pole, 3 signal whistles, a box of 20 bars of soap, 10 iron spikes, tinderbox, box of 20 torches, 2 tents, 3 water skins, and a whetstone. Now you might be thinking, geez, that's a long list, Fred. But if you were setting up camp, you would have a lot of gear with you. And if you're mining, you would have a lot of gear with you. So it makes sense that this gear is here. So whether you use it up or not, it's up to you. I don't mind. Area 2. This is the mine tunnels. The ochre jelly that is meant to stalk the player characters is not a particularly stealthy monster, unfortunately. But it should be lurking on the ceiling waiting to drop onto a lone character if that ever occurs. You'll find as a general rule that the party will probably stick together rather than split up, unless of course they're very foolish. This monster may never get used, and if it does get used, it may get killed very quickly, particularly if the players have a light source and they look up. So an ochre jelly can go unnoticed in darkness or dim light, even if the player characters have something like dark vision. But it's probably very easy to spot in bright light if the characters also look up, as I just mentioned. Asking players for a marching order for this maze of passageways is mostly to help determine who is in the front or the back of the group when determining who gets to make a perception check or apply passive perception to notice the ooze following them, or potentially when they first discover it. Try using a hand-drawn sketch or mini-map of the maze. Like those tunnels, it's a bit complicated. You don't have to draw it out as a full-blown map to scale or anything like that. This will just help the player characters track their position so they don't get confused. And a line drawing is perfectly adequate to do this. The only time you might want to draw up the location if you're doing maps, miniatures and dice is the specific location where they fight the ochre jelly, if that actually ever occurs. Area 3, the old entrance. Now, the old entrance has got sturges in it. All 10 sturges can potentially surround a single player character. You could have 9 of them surrounding them, and then after that you've got the opportunity to also have one coming from above, because they fly. So it's possible to surround a single character. If the sturges surround one character and get surprise as well, and a high initiative, the character is likely to become unconscious or dead before they even get to act in combat, even if they are level 4. The sturges are hungry, but will likely be sleeping. They potentially can't hear anything over the noise of the booming waves in Area 16 as well. So even if the player characters make noise, that's not necessarily enough to actually disturb them. Player characters might want to sneak past the sturge nest. Wouldn't be very difficult to do. You might require a stealth check, you might not. The fact is they're not going to be seen if they're sleeping. They may be smelt, but these things might be potentially asleep, conserving energy since they're quite hungry. And they won't necessarily hear them if they're sleeping either, because of the noise that there's being pushed through the different passageways from the crashing waves. There are some rotten wooden shields amongst the orc skeletons that have the symbol of the Urcrypt, and this is an orc tribe. There is an online wiki for the Urcrypt tribe. If you wanted a bit more information, it does exist. The 3 emblems of the major clans or families appearing on the wall as a mural symbolizing the Phandelver Pact. I would suspect that one of them will be for the dwarves. Maybe you decide that the Rockseeker brothers are their descendants in some way. Gnomes and humans, maybe. And you might want to suggest, if it's human, it might be the Tressendorf family. There is an online wiki for the Phandelver Pact if you want more information on the Phandelver Pact and your players start seeking information on that topic. They may or may not do that. Area 4, the old guardroom. There's a lot of stuff in these places, isn't there? 9 skeletons. Seems like a lot for a group, but they will be absolutely fine. 9 skeletons against a group of level 4 characters doesn't stand a chance. The best strategy for dealing with skeletons is bludgeoning weapons or attacks, because this monster is vulnerable to bludgeoning damage and or blunt weapons. Also, something like turning the undead ability, quite viable. It will probably work quite well. The only problem is they can't run very far. They're just going to run to the back of the room. And then, of course, they could just flee. They could just flee and just close the door and block the door off, and it's done. You don't have to actually fight the skeletons at all. Consider adding loot to the room or information to find, like a diary or an adventuring gear. Anything from page 150 of the player's handbook might be suitable. Pick out something that you think might be useful to them. Now, a box full of earplugs that were used by the guards to help sleep with all the noise that they wind up having to deal with in this location. You could have a box of earplugs being found in this room. And why would you want the earplugs? Well, potentially it's going to help quite nicely with dealing with the noise that's being thrown around this location. There are other reasons to have earplugs, but I won't go into that at this point. So yeah, some things that they might find useful in the future. Area 5. Area 5 is the assayer's office. Basically, this is the accountant's office. If the player characters can't open that strong box because the DC is a high DC, consider letting them try something else, so a different technique. Now that doesn't mean that they get to try to break it open again, because their first attempt kind of represents their overall attempt over a period of time, and it maybe the box is simply too tough for them to get through. So there's no point, if you're going to let them re-roll the check for the DC, there's no point rolling the dice at all. Okay, so one check for that box is my recommendation. Player characters could take the strong box with them though, and then maybe later on when they have an acid vial, they could pour the acid vial into the lock, burning out the lock and then being able to open it. Breaking the box open with a crowbar might be required with a strength check. Now I would say a DC 25. When you have a crowbar, you have advantage on that check because it is a crowbar. Bashing weapons could smash the box with an attack roll. I would say an AC of 19 because it's quite a strong, solid box, and give it about 10 hit points. Now, if you're wondering where do I get this information with regard to trying to smash open a strong box, really it's deducted from the Dungeon Master Guide on page 246 to 247. And if you want that information, that's where I suggest you look. The Dwarvish markings are just a few scattered letters. There's nothing on those scraps of paper. So there are a bunch of scraps of paper in this location. There are no messages that will make any sense. All they will find is some scattered letters in Dwarven, in the Dwarven language. Nothing that will give them any additional information, unfortunately. Of course, you could have changed that if you wanted to. Area 6, the South Barracks. Now we start getting into these monsters here. Yeah, well, there's been monsters everywhere so far. This place is absolutely packed with them. The ghouls' best ability is actually their claw attack, because they can paralyze their victim. So lead with the claw attack and paralyzing, and keep using it, because this is what makes the ghoul nasty. The best strategy for dealing with ghouls is ranged attacks if they can, turn undead, and just flee if they have to. Ignore the DC 10 Wisdom Perception check to listen at the door for the feeding ghouls, as it's an easy check. The characters just need to listen at the door. As long as they say, we listen at the door, they should be able to hear munching noises on the other side. They won't necessarily know that it's ghouls munching, but they'll know that there's something there munching away. None of the armor worn by the dwarven or orc corpses is going to be useful. Okay, none of it's usable at all. And this sort of is stipulated in the adventure to a large degree already. Area 7, the ruined storeroom. The ruined storeroom is here for a very specific reason. This room is intended to be used as a resting place for the player characters by blocking or barring the door from the inside. The old beer keg barrels can be stacked in front of the door to block it off. There is possibly even a door bar that has been installed by the dwarves and gnomes many years ago, who actually built the mine as a secure location for retreating from a threat. Because sometimes it's better to retreat within your mine rather than try to get all the way out. Maybe this is what they built it for in the first place. Pitons and iron spikes can be wedged or hammered into the door to hold it closed. So this is an old school technique. So if you're not familiar with it, or your players aren't familiar with it, you certainly could drop it as a hint if you wanted to. Area 8. Sorry. Area 8 is the Fungi cavern. Although the map doesn't indicate that the fungi covers the majority of the floor, assume that it does from the text. If you read the text, that's what it sort of leads you to believe. The map doesn't really indicate that. A nature or survival check could be made by the player characters to determine that the fungus might be dangerous or poisonous. I'm going to suggest a DC of 15 since nothing is suggested in the adventure. This room is a slow-acting environmental trap. It's done deliberately, that players are meant to try and avoid and take a different path when discovered. So it's not here to necessarily waylay everybody. Probably it's only supposed to trip up one person. Consider giving player characters advantage or automatic success on their Constitution saving throw if they cover their mouth and nose or hold their breath. Either one probably would be suitable. the Lesser Restoration spell, which you will find on page 255 of the Player's Handbook, or the Paladin's Lay on Hands power, which you'll find on page 84 of the Player's Handbook, can remove the poison condition, because the poison condition is not a good thing to have. Area 9, the Great Cavern. We've got rather a lot of things here now. There's a lot of undead here. These lurking ghouls have a chance to ambush the party of characters. So roll a 20-sided dice and add the stealth modifier of +2 for the stealth check, because these ghouls do have a stealth modifier. And they would probably be waiting to lay waste to anybody who, they would hear you. Well, they wouldn't hear you, but they would probably be waiting for something to come by. So laying an ambush is a fairly standard tactic for the ghoul. Compare the ghoul's stealth check with the player character's passive perception or an active perception check, whichever you would prefer. Depends on what you think is appropriate to use at the time. This is how you will determine surprise before you roll initiative. 7 ghouls can be a deadly fight with paralyzing claw attacks, so allow player characters to flee if they need to. If they get into a bit of a pickle, they should be able to run away. There is a lot that a Dungeon Master could add to the cavern if they wanted, because it was like the main feasting area. So you could add a lot of stuff that they could find here. Things that would potentially be useful, and some things that might be just knickknacks. The last location has a pretty good write-up on it already, but what I will say is it's not necessary for the player characters to make a perception check or even use passive perception. It should be more than enough if they state that they search or investigate the pool to find the treasure on the skeleton. That happens. Often you'll find that a lot of these checks that we have in place are so easy that they're almost a waste of time to actually perform, which kind of defeats the purpose of making things exciting, particularly if there's a 50-50 chance of success. Now, that's all I have for today. This is part 1, and part 2 of Wave Echo Cave will be lesson 7, and I'll be running that next week. I'm hoping that this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. If you have any questions, use the comment section. If you have any feedback that you would like to add, okay, this is what the comment section is all about. Thank you for watching my video and my live stream, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those videos. Keep rolling those videos. Man, I'm getting hot and tired in here already. Keep rolling those 20s. That's a 20-sided dice. Yep. Give me a second. I just need to organize myself. I was trying to make myself comfortable while I was doing this. And we'll come back to my face. We'll do the chat in your chat section and in the live chat section. And then we'll go from there. And we'll see how we are doing today. What have we got? I don't expect it to be a very busy room. What I will do is I will do my very best to cover and explain anything that you would like me to cover. Particularly as this would potentially be, there may be 1 or 2 more. There will at least be 1 more Wave Echo Cave lesson. I'll do that next week, just before Christmas. In terms of the Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorials, this could be either the 3rd to last or the 2nd to last. So there may be 1 more may be 1 more Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorial before we get into my holiday time, or there might be 2 more. I don't know how that's going to work out. I still haven't figured that out. I think there will be 2, but I'm not sure. They will return, but they will go on hiatus for 2 weeks while I'm on leave. And during that period of time when I'm on holiday, my brother will be painting miniatures on my channel. Okay. Are you concerned about running or managing Wave Echo Cave? Yes, 58%. I kind of totally understand this because it's a large location out of 12 votes. No, 8%. Good. Okay, good. Undecided, 17%. All right. And just watching, 17%. Okay. Let's have a look at the chat here. I said hi to Dungeons and Chronics. Hello again. Nacho Man is here. Nacho Man is a patron. Oh, so I should point out that everything that I create for this, for the Lost Mine of Phandelver, everything goes on to Patreon. All of the lessons, all the different locations, there are Dungeon Master handouts. They include all of my notes that are part of these live streams, but they also include links and links to information that you would need so that you don't have to go and find it yourself, just to speed up that process for you. So there's a lot of additional stuff that I can't include in the live presentation that would be in the Patreon documents, the Dungeon Master handout for the Lost Mine of Phandelver. There are 8 of them, plus a few other things there as well that I've done over the years. And there will, of course, be more going up as I work my way through my backlog, but we'll see how fast that happens because it's been pretty hard recently to make that happen. There's, of course, a lot of other stuff. And you can sign up to Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can pay more. Oh, that's always nice. But it definitely, I think it's worth your effort. I think you get a pretty good service there. Anyway, so yes, and also you support me continuing this program, plus all the other programs. I run 5 programs during the week, and there's a lot going on. You're currently halfway through this dungeon, Nacho. Okay. How's it going, Dinomancer? Dinomancer is also a patron. Hello, how are you doing? I put the magic boots inside the ochre jelly instead. You could. I mean, I suppose you could do that. You know, I don't, as I said, I don't think it's a big issue. I know players often don't like the idea of taking items off their friends if they're dead, but yeah, it can be worked through. So one of my players decided to put their head inside the old entrance and screamed, "Hello." So I made the Sturges fly out of the entrance as a swarm and made all the PCs all roll dex checks to avoid being attacked. Okay. So again, I mean, nothing wrong with doing that. You can run it however you. I mean, all I do is give you recommendations and suggestions. Okay, and what you do with it after that is up to you. But those Sturges probably won't hear a thing because those waves in Area 16 make so much noise and it would reverberate right throughout the entire complex. So sound is not really going to give them away. Do you know what I mean? So yelling won't really necessarily do anything. But of course, like I said, you can do it differently. I'll let one of my PCs Spartan kick one of the ghouls off the ledge into the cavern. He rolled a nat 20, so it was a cool moment. Oh, okay. What are you rolling now? Well, we're not rolling anything just yet because I haven't said let's roll some dice. But we will. What I would like to know, and I can't type into my keyboard. So the map for this is so large, it's actually sitting on my lap. It's over my desk and over my lap. I can't access my keyboard, so I can't type in anything into my keyboard today. So if you wind up rolling dice for me, D20s is always nice. I think what we will do is, if there's something that people specifically from area 1 to 10 would like me to show them, I can probably do that. I think the only location I might struggle with is actually area 9. If I remember right, I could not include that into the shot. Even with my camera as wide as possible, I could not include it. So what I thought I would do is sort of demonstrate some sort of the basics in terms of how you would go about dealing with this location. I think that's probably the easiest way. So we're going to go over to my battle grid over here. And I will I'll try my very best to keep everything in shot. So there's a couple of different things here that you might be sort of concerned about. I think probably most of you are thinking, okay, well, if they journey through here and they want to try and pass the Sturges, I think I've demonstrated this before, but I'll demonstrate it again. Sturges are actually pretty easy to deal with. Even 10 Sturges are pretty easy to deal with. If you have something like the sleep spell is a really good spell. Now, the reason the sleep spell is so good is because there's no attack roll, there's no saving throw, it just works. And that's a big factor with something like this. If you can do something like that, that makes all the difference. The other thing to remember too with something like this is that when you're rolling those dice, when you're trying to get somewhere with this, well, guess what? You only have to worry about Sturges having 2 hit points. They don't have a lot of hit points. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to show you how, if they do decide to try and get past the Sturges, and you decide that they're going to potentially have to deal with them, I want to sort of show you what that would look like, and then how they can deal with it. Probably the best way to deal with Sturges is something like Burning Hands is good, because they would pop off pretty easily. You might have to wind up hosing one of your player characters, which is not really nice, but Sleep will solve a lot of your problems. So let's sort of demonstrate what Sleep would look like if we did this. Let's just say we kind of looks like this. They're making their way through this way, through this route, and the Sturges are here. Now, if you've got dark vision, you would still have disadvantage, or a -5 to your passive perception to actually notice the Sturges. Now, the Sturges aren't necessarily making an active attempt to hide. They're just sleeping on the ceiling. So it's not like it would be a very difficult task. I would suggest to you that you probably don't even need to worry about rolling any kind of dice in terms of them noticing this. If they say they have a light source and they look up, they're probably going to see them for sure. Yeah. If they have a light source and they don't look up, they're probably going to see them. There's a good chance they'll still see them and still notice them. If they are in darkness and they don't have a light source with them and they have dark vision, they may find it harder to notice them. They might be right underneath them when they finally do notice them, rather than a little bit further away. It's really completely up to you. So let's show you what would happen if we cast the sleep spell on 10 Sturges. Now, the area that the sleep spell covers is quite large, so you can probably get every single one of them. Hello, Dan. How are you? Dan is a patron and also a moderator for the channel, and has been supporting me for a long time. You just finished session 1 with my family of 6 players. Very fun. Well, good. I'm glad it went well. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens with Sleep. Sleep requires you to roll 5d8. So 5 8-sided dice. That's a lot of dice. No attack roll, no saving throw. You just roll them. Okay? So it's going to kind of look a little bit like this. That's what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll all those dice in front of you so you can see it. I'm going to add them all up, and however much I roll up, that kind of determines how many of those little suckers I can put to sleep. And because they have the least number of hit points, we start with them. So the rest of the party will have more hit points than they do, so which is always handy. So this should be sitting right about here. So I have 5 8-sided dice. The sleep spell can be cast at first level to do this. And okay, we see some Sturges. You roll it, and then you add up all those dice. So just give me a second while I try to shuffle a few things out of the way. And I will have to move this just a little bit so I can actually write it all down. So I got a 7. I got a 1. That's not very good. I got an 8. That's pretty good. There is a 5. So we'll take the 5. And our last number is a 6. So I rolled pretty high, really. So if I add that all up, grand total, 7, 1 is 8, 16, 21, 27. So 27 hit points worth of creatures I can put to sleep. So let me show you this. There we go. That's what we have. That's our calculation for this part of it. Yep. Our sleep spell just went off, and we can probably include every single one of them. Now, as I said, no armor class attack roll, no saving throw involved at all with the spell. It's just a certain number of hit points. Now, if there's 10 Sturges, each one has 2 hit points. That means that if you count them all up, that's 20 hit points worth of creature. So I have enough to put them all to sleep. There would be 7 points left, which would be thrown onto whatever the creature is close enough within the area that it's going to affect them. That's it. It's pretty simple. And so that means something as simple as the sleep spell can take out all the sturges. Now, I know what you're thinking, Fred, but if you take out the sturges, wouldn't they fall off the ceiling? And if they fall off the ceiling, then they're going to wake up when they hit the ground. Well, you could do it that way, but maybe the process is, instead of them falling off the ceiling, they just stay asleep. They're not going to wake up because they've been magically put to sleep, so they stay asleep for a period of time. So that gives the players enough time to get past. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, but Fred, again, what if I decide they should, in fact, fall and hit the ground? How far off the ceiling would they be? Well, if we look at this area, since we're looking at area 3, and we're looking at sort of how high the ceiling would be, and you look at how this place is laid out, it does state sort of how high the ceiling is. So it says here, tunnels are 10 feet high unless noted otherwise. Rooms are 20 feet high, have 20 feet high ceilings, while natural caves have a 30-foot high ceiling dotted with stalagmites. So even if we decide that the sturges are going to fall because they've fallen asleep and they come off and detach from the ceiling and they fall 10 feet because this is a passageway. If you count this as a passageway as just 10 feet high, or if you decide it's like a bit of a rough cavern area, then it's 30 feet. Well, 30 feet would be 3 6-sided dice worth of damage to your sturges as they fall. Yep. And because they're sleeping, they're not going to wake up part way through. They're only going to wake up when they hit the ground. Correct? Yep. So that's a lot. So that means each sturge would be taking, in this case, 10 points of damage. That'll kill them. Yep. Now, what if you say, I know what you're saying. Okay, but Fred, what if it's 10 feet? It's probably 10 feet, not 30 feet. So you're not going to be rolling 3 6-sided dice. You're going to be rolling 1. So I rolled a 2. On average, I'm going to roll 3. Okay, on average, and they've only got 2 hit points. So that when they hit the ground, they all go splat. Dead. Easiest way to deal with sturges. Goodbye, sturges. You don't have to worry about them anymore. Okay, so do not feel like you need to hold back when dealing with these little fellas, because it's actually not necessary. The players will be perfectly fine. I know a lot of people have tried to freak you out and say, oh, get rid of the sturges because they could take out a character. Nah, they could, but the chances are that they won't, because they'll never get a chance to do so, because they're probably sleeping, and even if you don't have them sleeping, they've got a simple spell, which one of your players are probably going to have, sleep, and they put them down. And that's it. End of story. No more. Okay, so let's get rid of that. If you have questions, please post them. I cannot type in #question please because I can't reach my keyboard. It's blocked off by the map. Okay, let's do something else. Let's deal with some of the other issues you might be thinking about. And my first guess is, well, okay, they take their route. They could go Okajelly way, but what if they decide to go the route where the fungus is? What if they go that way? How do we resolve that? Well, let's have a look at this. Mac, astronomer, hello, how are you? Sturges are like bats. They sleep stuck to the ceiling. Exactly, Mac. If you put them to sleep, wouldn't that just... that's exactly it. They would just stay there. I just said that. They would just stay there. But if you decide to rule differently, and you decide that they're going to fall because they fell asleep and they were attached to the ceiling, you can do that. But anyway, they're no longer an issue. They will go splat on the floor, and they're dead as a doorknob. If you just have them hanging from the ceiling and continuing to sleep, then it's not a big issue at all. Yep. All right. Hello, John B. How you doing? Where do you get the map? Okay. Where do you get the map so big? Okay, John. I did answer this question, but I'll answer the question again. Okay. Because I get this question a lot. I have even made a video on the topic. I want you to look at the map that you're looking at right now. Each square is not a 5-foot square. That's just what I've done when I printed this map. Okay? It should be 10 feet, which means that 4 miniatures should be able to fit into one square. Because on the map, it's 10 foot by 10 foot. Okay? The squares are 10-foot squares. not 5-foot squares. So this map should be significantly larger. So how do you deal with the map if you want to print it? I know this is the question that you're asking, so I'll answer it again. It's really impractical to blow this up. To blow it up to a decent size is really impractical. And ultimately the reason being is that it's just too big. It's going to be 6 foot by 8 foot in size, which is huge. It's a massive size. So, and you would have to chop it up into 6 pieces if you were to print it out on A1 size paper. Now, A1 size paper is the size of the maps that I use, the other maps that I use, such as Cragmore Hideout and Cragmore Castle, and even the Red Brand Hideout, where they are to scale. And that's a very large map. That takes up, I have a big desk, it takes up almost all my desk. Do you know what I mean? So, if you're going to be printing out Wave Echo Cave to scale, impractical. All I did, as I said, is I downloaded the high resolution map from D&D Beyond, which is free, doesn't cost you anything. Put it onto a pen drive or a memory stick, or you can put it onto, whatever, a memory chip or whatever it is. Take it into a print shop that will print good quality in color and also of a decent size. And I asked them, so I went to a proper professional print shop that does this. You can go to a stationery shop. A lot of stationery shops also do this if they're big enough. And I said, I need you to print this out. What sizes do you have? And they said they have, biggest size we can print at is A0. A0 is quite large. Okay, so I said, okay, I want you to take this map here and fit it to that A0 without stretching it. And they said, that's fine. They did that. They showed me what it would look like when they printed it. I asked them to print it in color. They printed it in color. I picked a good quality paper because I knew I was going to be reusing this map. And then I got it laminated with a matte finish, which made it quite an expensive process. So it's not cheap. And that's how I printed my map. That's how I got it done. But you don't need to do that necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Okay. All right. So let's shuffle on back to my my little setup here. And I thought what I would do in this situation is I would sort of go over the process of dealing with our fungus room. The fungus room presents a few problems, and I'm sure you've already guessed what they might potentially be. So let's have a look at what the fungus room can offer us as the players decide to navigate. Now you remember how I said, look, if they cover their mouth with their hand and their nose with their hand and try to walk through, just don't worry about making any kind of check. I've done that deliberately. Do you know why I've done that deliberately? Because that should be good enough to make it work. That should be good enough. Do you know why? Because the DC is only 11. It's a Constitution saving throw of DC 11. It's hardly anything. Now, of course, you could decide to give them advantage on the check because they are covering their mouth or nose, or they have a rag over their mouth and nose, or even if they hold their breath, But that would, I would say, is probably sufficient. So what I thought I would do, since I'm sure there's a few of you who are like, I'm not really convinced, Fred. Maybe we should be rolling that. Let me just sort of demonstrate what you're likely to get. Because a DC 11 pretty much means that everybody only has a 50-50 chance of failing, it really isn't much point doing it. Do you know what I mean? Often it's better to allow players to be successful because they've just done something that was smart. Dice don't care about how smart the players are because they're random. And so you as a dungeon master can make that change. So let's do a Constitution. Let me just write this up and I'll put it in front of you so you can see what's going on. Constitution saving throw. And the DC, as I said, DC is 11. And most characters should at least have a +1 to their Constitution if they've built their character even remotely in a sensible way. So this is what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to go through and show you what's likely to happen with all of your characters. And I'm going to roll each one separately so that you can see. And I will probably do this as well. We'll go rogue. No, come on, rogue. Wizard. Fighter. In fact, you guys could roll dice. Roll 20-sided dice. Roll me a 20-sided dice. Let's see how this works out. I'll take your numbers. If nobody rolls the dice, I will roll them. But I'm fine for you to roll the dice. Let's see if you would really fail any of these checks, because I suspect you probably won't. I suspect that most of you will succeed on those checks. And let's just move that down just a fraction so you can see what's going on. There we go. So moving across the room to the other side, and you make some checks. Right, so you start rolling some dice and I will start taking your numbers down. Okay, and if you don't roll, then I will roll some dice. So the first one I think I'm going to start off with is the rogue. The rogue's got a fairly good modifier. Okay, their constitution saving throw is a +1. So it's a 1 plus whatever we roll on the 20-sided dice. Oops. My pen is starting to die on me. I'm sorry if you can't see it. I do apologise. All right, first one. So moving across the room, and you've decided that they're going to have to make a check, whether they put their hand over their mouth or nose, or they put a cloth over their hand or nose, or they hold their breath. So let's see what it's actually going to wind up resulting in. Grimm's Vids. Okay, Grimm's Vids, let's have a look what that does. So you got a 6. Thank you, by the way, Grimm's Vids, for actually rolling a 20-sided dice. I do appreciate it. Okay, so our rogue actually failed that one. That's a failure. And I will explain what the result of that would be, but that's a failure, so we'll put that down. And then we'll do the next one. I'm going to be pretty quick about this, so if you people don't roll 20-sided dice, then I'm just going to roll them myself. Next is going to be, I done the rogue, so I want the wizard. The wizard has got a +2, actually, in this case, so I'll change that to a 2. Better than 50% chance of success. And I rolled a 4. Well, I rolled very low. There's a lot of low rolls. Here we go. So 4, 6. 2 and 4 is 6, so we fail that one. So we'll put down the 6. Dungeons and Chronics has got a high number, got a 16. So we'll be applying that to probably our fighter next. Thank you for doing that. And our fighter's modifier is a mighty 2. It's also a 2. The constitution, is it a constitution 2? No, it's 4. They've got a 4. Yeah, that's right. They've got a 4 for their con modifier. They're actually proficient in it, aren't they? And then we take the number that you have rolled, Dungeons and Chronics, and that's a 16. You get a 20. Oh, this pen is dying on me. Bit of frustrating. Okay, but we get a 20. So the fighter did all right. They succeeded. They didn't fail it. They didn't get less than 11. So that's good for them. And then our last one is the cleric. And I see that Dan has rolled very average. She's got a 10. And our cleric has got a constitution modifier or save, in this case, of 2. So it's pretty basic. 2 or 1 is usually what you would expect. And you got a 10, Dan, so it comes out at 12. So we succeed. So 2 of them failed and 2 of them succeeded. Max, thank you for rolling the 13. Okay, all right, let me just show you what that looks like. That means that half the party succeeded, half the party failed. Trying to move across there. Let's bear in mind that 2 of the characters did roll very badly. Now, if you had taken, say, for example, the dice roll that I had made, which was a 4, or taken Grimm's Vid's roll, which was a 6, if we had rolled with advantage, so instead of rolling the 4, if I had given them advantage and rolled, Well, I just rolled a 20. So if we're going advantage, you take the highest number, so it would be the 20 or the 4. Chances are they would have succeeded. If Grimm's Vids had been rolling with advantage, instead of getting the 6, they had rolled up in this case, a 1, they still fail. Almost everybody in the party is going to succeed on this thing because the number's so small. In this case, it didn't work that way. 2 people were very unlucky. And the dice don't care about whether you have covered your mouth or nose or holding your breath or anything like that, or even if you've done both. And this is why I say sometimes it's better for actions to speak greater than the number that you rolled. So let's look at what the damage output for something like this is. Well, the level 4, and the adventure says that they take 3 6-sided dice worth of damage, poison damage. Okay, so we're going to roll these. So now they're going to take poison damage. Poison damage is not the big issue. So they take 16 points of damage, both those characters, which is a fair chunk for level 4. They may decide that they don't want to proceed. They may decide they want to try and heal themselves, whatever. The biggest issue is always when you take damage, okay, is that they are poisoned for 10 minutes. They are poisoned for 10 minutes. That's what the adventure says. 10 minutes is a long time. 10 minutes means that while you are poisoned, you're going to have disadvantage on some checks. Things that you probably don't want to have disadvantage on. It's not the end of the world, but 10 minutes, depending on how fast they move, all the players, look, to give you an idea of what this is going to look like, all the players are going to do is they're going to say, okay, I'm now poisoned. Okay, well, let's take a short rest because I want to get rid of this poison thing. Or let's go take a long rest. That's all the players are going to wind up doing. And if they can't do that, they're going to just see if they can wait it out and see if the poison condition will disappear. Even if they decide that are taking the poison damage, there's nothing I can do about it. Getting rid of the poison condition, they're just going to wait it out. And all they've got to do is wait 10 minutes. Now, if they had been poisoned for 24 hours, that would have been significant. But being poisoned for 10 minutes is kind of a waste of your time. And a waste of their time too. Okay? So that's why I recommend ignoring the adventure and that DC 11 Constitution saving throw. If they're going to take damage and be poisoned for 24 hours, it's a bit different. And it will change the way they have to actually proceed. Okay, so that's our our location over there. I'm going to get rid of this. This is usually where I take a short break before coming back, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to give you I'm going to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to look after you for about 5 or less minutes, and then I will proceed back and we'll continue on our journey as we work our way through how to deal with these locations. Okay, all right. 5 minutes and I'm back. Alright, I'm heading back in, just switching over and making sure I have enough water, which I should hopefully have. We've got another hour to get through. And yes, we'll get you to roll more dice in a second, I think. Alright, I think I'm ready now. Here we go, transition back over. There we go. Right, let's get rid of that. And let's see if there's any questions that have popped up in the chat while I've been away. Okay, let's see. We've got the dice rolling. Thanks. So, Mac, I'm glad you found that useful. I did the walls of Welton today, free one shot. Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't. So you weren't actually running. You weren't running Lost Mine of Phandelver. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do a stealth check here. Do you know why? Because it actually makes no sense that the player characters need to make a stealth check in this location. Okay, because of that noise. And, you know, hiding in the dark, maybe it'll come up, maybe it won't. Instead, what I'm going to do is I will roll up some initiatives so you can see how initiative is played out. So whenever you ask your players to roll initiative, because there's going to be a fight, make sure that you have described the thing that took place that essentially meant that there was going to be something going on. Okay? Whatever happens, don't just lead off as roll initiative. It's always better to say something like, you see them draw their sword, or you see a creature lunge at you, or the creature opens its mouth wide and is trying to bite your toe, or something like that. Like whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, as long as you give them some sort of descriptor. So we're going to roll initiative. Let's assume, for whatever reason, they wind up opening this door, and we're having to contend with the likes of, say, ghouls. And we'll roll up initiative. So you open the door and you see in the room there's a bunch of ghouls feasting on a corpse. When the door swings open, they see you and they lunge towards you. You can even say they say brains. They want their brain. They want your brains. They probably don't want your brains, but you can say that if you want. Anyway, let's do some initiative. So you're going to roll some 20-sided dice, please. So anybody who has a 20-sided dice on you, if you don't roll the dice, then I will roll the 20-sided dice for the initiative. I'm going to be rolling initiative for all of the characters. I have a rogue, wizard, fighter, and cleric. I will also need a roll for the dungeon master's monsters, in this case our ghouls, and then we will put them into order so you can see how it looks. Okay, and then I will explain and show you how the ghouls work in a battle. I think that's probably going to be reasonably useful to some of you. Maybe not all of you, some of you will be familiar with that. Thank you, Dan, for rolling some dice. Do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so, and will I be able to fit this in the bottom? I will push you up a little bit more, and then I will be able to. Okay, that's good. Sweet, sweet. All right. So, first off, wizard. Let's start with our wizard. They have an initiative modifier of 2. I'm just taking them as being level 1. I'm not leveling them up because it's not going to work for me. So just assume these are the pre-made characters from the character sheet and they're level 1, although they would normally be level 2 when they go through this location. It's just going to be easier for me. Okay. So Dan has rolled an 8, so we go 2 and 8 for our wizard, and they get a 10. So that's what we start with. Ghouls. There we go. There's a ghoulie baby. There's a ghoulie baby. So wizard gets a 10. Man, this pen is just not working very well. Just give me a second. I'm going to grab another pen. It's time to cycle that little blacker out. Wizard, fighter, cleric, DM. Of course, when you're doing the rolls for initiative, you only have to roll for your monsters. The players will do the rest. Okay. Okay. All right. We've got some good numbers coming through now. So we've got an 8 with the first one, so that's that fella done. And then the next one will be for our fighter. We'll go -1. -1 for fighter. And then we need to add our 20-sided dice roll, which is, in this case, we're going to take max 18. Comes out at a 17. So Mac, the fighter just got a 17 because of you. Just like so. And then we'll also do the cleric, because the cleric's also got a -1. So we'll use the same. Oh, is it the right kind of marker? It is, but it's not coming off very well. This marker is too aggressive. Just give me a second. See if I can actually get this to. Oh man, it's sticky as. It is super sticky. Towel. Using that marker has made a bit of a problem now. I've now got a whiteboard that's covered in black smudges that actually is so sticky it doesn't actually wipe off with water or a towel. Oh no. Man, I have to be careful about using those things in the future. Okay. Alright, let's see if this is going to work now. So, we've got 18. 2 Dungeons and Chronics. That'll be the cleric. Dungeons and Chronics got a 2, so that's a 1 for our cleric. Well done. Our cleric got a really low initiative. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And nobody's rolled for another character, so I will have to roll for the next character by the looks of it. Our rogue has a 3 for their initiative. Ah, it's doing it again. Oh, you. This is the problem with using new products. Is obviously probably using cheap products. I don't think it was that cheap, but apparently it is. Sorry about this, people. I haven't used these markers on these whiteboards before, on this whiteboard before, and this is definitely causing a whole bunch of problems I wasn't expecting. Okay, all right. So let's see if this actually dries out. Will it allow me to write on it? No, it's just going to smudge everywhere. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I can't do much about it. 3 plus. You don't have to be sorry. Why are you sorry? I'm quite happy. I appreciate you rolling low. Okay. So I rolled a 15, add 3 for the rogue. Comes to 18. So the rogue will get an 18. If this pen will even work. 18. No, it doesn't work at all. 18. 18. Okay. All right. And then the last one, we need a Dungeon Master monster roll. Now, the initiative for your ghoul is the +2 dexterity modifier. Okay, it's on. You won't see initiative for a monster anywhere. But what you do is you roll that instead. Okay. So we take a 2. We roll whatever we have on our dice. Dungeon Master rolls, and I get a 5. 2 and 5 is 7. Okay, so now that we have all those numbers, we take the numbers and we put them into order. Okay, we're going to put them into order. Whoever's at the, got the highest number goes first. Whoever's got the lowest number goes last. So the cleric's going to be going last. Good for you. So first number, highest is the rogue, so they're at the top, followed by the Dungeon Master, so push everybody down. Dungeon Master got a 17, so 17, you are there. And, no, Dungeon Master got a 7. So 17's the fighter. Fighter, followed by the 10, which is the wizard. Followed by the DM, which is a 7. Followed by the cleric, who's last with a 1. Okay? So on your first round, whatever you describe to them, the first person who gets to act, provided they're not surprised, okay? If you're surprised, you don't get to act in the first round. If you're not surprised in the first round, then yeah, so there's potential for the ghouls to be surprised. So it would go rogue first. The rogue does whatever they want to do. The fighter takes their turn. The wizard takes their turn. When it gets to the dungeon master, they are going to take their turn if they're not surprised. If you've decided the ghouls were actually surprised and they snuck up on them, which would actually be quite easy to do, then they would take no turn, and then you go to cleric. So they would all get to do something. Then you'd roll back round 2, and go rogue, fighter, wizard, and back to the dungeon master. So what does the dungeon master look like? What does it look like when the dungeon master makes a attack with their ghoul? This is just awful now. Pens, markers don't work properly. Again, it's causing me problems. I have to just throw that thing away in a bin or somewhere. Okay, so ghoul, the ghoul's attack. So let's do some ghoul's attacks. Hey, let's do that. What does their ghoul attack look like? Well, it's a claw and a bite. Forget about the bite. All you want to do is just keep using the claws, because better chance to hit. Maybe not as good a damage, but it's the effect that's important. So it'll be a +4. If I can actually get this to mark out. I don't know if you can even see that. It's barely visible. Ghoul 4. No, it doesn't even want to write on it. I don't know. What do I do here? What happens when you can't actually mark out numbers for people so they can actually see what's... I know what I'll do. I'm going to use a dice. The modifier is a 4. I'm just going to place the dice on it. That's the easiest way I can think of to make this easy. I can't add it all up for you, but at least I can do it that way. Do I mask the map? Yes, I don't usually reveal everything. Dan, I will cover things over with bits of paper and then reveal places as they go if I've got a map that's already been drawn out. Okay, so yeah, absolutely I do that sort of thing. Okay, so that's so we roll a 20-sided dice for our attack with our ghoul. If you're in a battle with them, whatever the battle is, there they are, they're fighting the fighter. I get an 18, so you take that 18, add it to the 4, which is the attack modifier, okay, and 4 and 18 is 22. No, I don't have anything that can indicate 22. I'm not even going to bother writing it down, it's just not going to work. Paper and pencil, yeah, if I'm drawing it out, I just draw it out as I go. I won't necessarily draw the whole thing out all at once. Okay, so in terms of damage, I recommend using the average damage for the claw, which is actually on the outside in the brackets, which is a 7. Just doing 7 damage is fine. But if you don't want to do that and you want to actually do damage, then the easiest way to make this look is going to be the following. So when you do damage, let's get rid of that. When you do damage, it's going to be a 2 modifier and 2 4-sided dice. So I don't have 2 4-sided dice, thank God for that. That makes it even harder for me to demonstrate everything now. I got a 4, okay, and then if I roll it again, then I get another number, so I'm going to put this as a marker. Here's my 4 here, but I rolled on my 4-sided dice, and I roll another one. I got a 2, so 2, 4, and 2, that's 8 damage. The damage output is not the thing. What's really important is that Constitution saving throw of DC 10. And the DC 10, if you are dealing with new players, don't change it. If you're dealing with experienced players, change it to a 13. Okay, my suggestion to you is, this is a challenge rating 1 monster. It should not have DCs of 10. The lowest you should have as a DC is a 13. That would be my advice to you. But if you're dealing with new players, don't worry about that sort of thing. Okay? New players are still trying to get to grips with the game. So that's your ghouls. Well, that didn't turn out to be a particularly easy way to demonstrate anything. Frankly, if I'm going to have to use dice to demonstrate everything because the pens aren't working. Great. All right. Okay, so next on our list, I'm not going to change the initiative that I've got here rolled. Instead, let's have a look at what it would look like if they have to fight, say, an ochre jelly. So maybe they are wandering through and they do discover the ochre jelly. Yep. And then, of course, we will have a battle ensue with Ochre Jelly and them. Ochre Jelly might be squeezing. That's probably easier that way. There really isn't an awful lot of space because this map is too small, but that's life. Okay, so our Ochre Jelly. What does the Ochre Jelly look like in terms of a battle? And what will it do? And how does it work? Well, the first thing you'll notice is it has a very special ability. And its very special ability is basically that it splits as a reaction. So the last thing they want to do is lightning damage or slashing damage, which is very, very likely to occur. It's funny for the Dungeon Master, it's not funny for them, but that doesn't mean you're not going to do it, because you're definitely going to do it. Okay, but it has a pseudopod attack, and that's its only real thing that it can do. It can spider climb, which is why I say allow it to go upside down on the ceiling, because it makes it a bit more interesting. That's probably where it would want to be. So let's go with Ochre Jelly. I don't know if I can actually write anything. Ochre Jelly. You wouldn't believe how difficult it is to get pens right now too. Okay, so Ochre Jelly, and our modifier is just a 2. That's what we add to whatever we roll in our dice. The dice that we roll for this creature is nice and simple. The actual bludgeoning damage is two 6-sided dice, just like that. Nice and simple. You're going to roll them and add that to the 2. I would again recommend using the average. The average on the outside for the pseudopod is a 9 outside the brackets, rather than rolling dice. It just solves a lot of time issues. You speed everything up. So I rolled a 2, so add 2 to 2 and to 6. So 2, 2, 6, that's 10 damage from a pseudopod. It also does additional damage, okay? It does acid damage as well. So you roll another 6-sided dice. You won't be adding anything else to it. And that's the acid damage, which is 6. So 10 bludgeoning, 6 acid. So you can see that a pseudopod from the Ochre Jelly can actually do a reasonable amount of damage, but you're dealing with level 4 characters, and there's going to be a group of them, and it's on its own. And it's only got 45 hit points. 45 hit points when you're dealing with level 4 characters. If it does not get to act before everybody else, your Ochre Jelly is dead. Unless they slash it. If they slash it, which has got a high probability, it's likely to die. But even if they, here's the thing, even if they decide to slash it or do lightning damage, it's still not going to be a big issue, because a level 4 character can take that much damage and they'll still be standing, even if they are a wizard. So yeah, it's not. So don't feel like this is a taxing fight, because it's not. I'm probably going to have to buzz through all of this today, people, just because this room is too hot. And as a result of my pen not really working properly, which doesn't really help the situation, I can't really draw out and write everything out the way I would normally. So I'm going to probably speed through this today, unfortunately. Okay, let's have a look at what happens if we deal with our characters and they wind up against skeletons. Skeletons, I know, you know how I said don't worry about the skeletons. The skeletons aren't really a huge threat. I'm really quite serious. They really aren't a big threat. They will, the characters will be fine. The skeletons are just skeletons, you know, and they're easy to knock down, because all you had to do is bludgeoning damage, and then poof, she's out of commission. So let's see if I can get a pen that writes briefly in a rather pathetic manner. Skeletons, where are you? There we go, there's a skeleton. Let's see if our skeletons will actually do anything. Skeleton, okay. Not really writing very well, but anyway, so first off, when we look at our initiative, the rogue is going to go first, then the fighter, then the wizard. You can definitely have your party surprise the skeletons. So in all likelihood, on the first round, the players will go through rogue, fighter, wizard, get to the DM, don't get to act because they're surprised if they sneak into the area, because one, they're not going to, the skeletons aren't going to see them coming, they're not going to hear them coming, they're not going to smell them coming. So you're probably going to get surprised on the skeletons, right? So probably in the first round, your dungeon masters skeletons do nothing. The cleric takes their turn. We go to the top of the round again. We're on to round 2. And they all take their turn. And finally, if they're still alive, and by now they've probably bashed their way through half of the skeletons, or they've closed the door and said, okay, stick a spike in it and let's go home, or go somewhere else. And the skeletons aren't going anywhere. So that's something to bear in mind, is like they aren't actually a big, huge threat. You can use a short sword or a short bow for the attack, but the attack bonus that they get is a 4. It's the same no matter what sort of attack they do. It's a very simple creature. All you do is you roll your 20-sided dice. When you're making attack with them, they get 1 attack each. I rolled an 18 in this case, so I'd add the 18 from the 20-sided dice to my bonus, which is a 4, and that will come out 22. And as long as I get equal to or greater than the armor class of the player characters, I hit. And if I hit, I do damage. How much damage do I do? Again, I'm going to recommend you use the average damage. For a short sword, the average damage is 5. It's outside the brackets. For a short bow, the average damage is 5 as well. So it's absolutely identical. The amount of damage that they do is the same if you roll. So if we're doing damage now, let's get rid of this. The modifier is a 2 to whatever we roll on the damage dice. So 2 plus whatever we roll on a 6-sided dice. Whether it's the short sword or the short bow, you're rolling the same 6-sided dice, people. You don't have to roll anything else. All you need is that. Okay, so I rolled a 6. So if I make a short sword attack or a longbow attack, short sword attack or a short bow attack, it would be that, and 2 and 8 damage on the player character. Nice and simple. They're very easy to run. Okay, not hard to do at all. Okay, look, there's really not a lot of questions being put forward today, which is fine. I am cooking in this office, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what's happening this week, and then I'm going to get out of this room before I die. Okay, because it's really, really uncomfortable, unfortunately. This is going to be a big problem over summer. Summer is going to be one of the worst times to be streaming and doing this sort of thing. But that's life. That's how it is. So, if you had any questions, now is the time to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you what's happening this week. As I said, there should be between 1 or 2 more Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorials before I go on holiday. Tomorrow, we are world building. Now, for those of you who have done world building with me before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I have every intentions of building a world. Now, some of you will be aware that I have a wall hanging of a sort of a mushroom forest with a little house in it, or collection of houses. And so I thought I would use that as our inspiration. Now, whether we do that or not is up to you, but we will be world building. I will go over the basics of world building, and then after that, we will actually build a world. Okay? Too hot. It's not a problem where I am, or I live. Well, I'm glad it's not a problem for you. Right now, it's not great for me. So world building is tomorrow, same time, just tomorrow. World building. Okay, and everything that we make as part of that world will go up onto Patreon. The next day, I will be covering a monster called Remorhaz. Remorhaz. I think it's Remorhaz. Yeah, it's basically the centipede monster. Okay, so that's the one I'll be covering. That'll be monster lore and workshop. So I will be talking about the basic creature, its biology, its combat tactics, ecology, habitat, society. I'll be talking about how to include it as some adventure ideas for it, and of course when it was published, and how to defeat the monster as well. Usually I include like how do you go about defeating the monster. So that'll all be part of the dungeon, the Remorhaz D&D monster lore and workshop, which will be the day after the world building, which is tomorrow. The next day, we'll be doing character creation for a barbarian to level 3. So level 3 barbarian, that's what we're going to build. So I'll cover the basics of building a barbarian only, not the basics of beginner character creation, just the basics of the bard, of the barbarian. That's it. So I'll be very quick because we're going to need all that time to build a level 3 character. I'm going to do it on D&D Beyond like I have been doing, and I'll probably do that for a little bit longer. I'm also, the next day after that, same time, I'm going to be running magic mechanics for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So I have a demonstration I have like a slideshow for you, or I'll explain stuff. I'll do some demonstration. I'll answer your questions. And the end of the week, I see somebody's got is that a question out there? Okay. So at the end of the week, I'll be talking about the future of Dungeons and Dragons in 2023. I see that the community has become very mature and are throwing out all sorts of silly comments into the stew and freaking themselves out. And primarily it annoys me. I know some people are worried about their income because they make Dungeons and Dragons products, so they're always worried about the open game license being changed in any way. There's talk about not having enough dungeon masters and dungeon master shortages. So I'm going to address all of that stuff. It won't be a clickbait other than it be me poking fun. I have selected for those of you who have ever watched Back to the Future, the movie, I've taken an image of Back to the Future and chucked it in as being a Dungeons and Dragons sort of idea. So all we're dealing with is really 2023 is not actually moving into a different direction. It's just going back to what they've done before. That's all that's going on there, really. Okay, so I know a lot of people are panicking, but they need to stop worrying about that sort of stuff. So I'm going to talk about that sort of stuff and a few other things, and some book releases and the movie and various other things. I think there's other stuff as well. So that's what I'll be talking about at the end of the week. That will be at 10 a.m. New Zealand daylight time. So a little bit different to the time frame right now for this class. Okay. Evelando Costa. Oh man, I butchered that name so badly. Evelando Costa. If I got your name right, you'll let me know. Give some tips to make Nesna more stronger. Yes, I do. Join my Patreon and download the new Nesna the Black Spider Dryder stat block. Use that. More spells for the final battle would be great. So next week we'll talk about Nesna the Black Spider and how you can upgrade Nesna. But this class has been running a while now. So we've already rebuilt Nesna as a Dryder. Okay? I've done all the maths for you. It's a stat block now, and it sits on my Patreon for anybody who wants to access it if they want to pay like $1 a month. You get a lot of stuff there. So that's already there. In terms of spells and stuff that you're going to get to use, I'm going to say that the general thing is make sure you have spells that are the same sort of spells that you would normally use if you are playing a character. Never put yourself in a bad position by simply restricting your access to spells, because Wizards of the Coast has said something like stupid like, we don't put counterspell or shield on spellcasters who are NPCs or monsters because it's not fun for the players to not have their spells work. Bollocks. Bollocks to you, Wizards of the Coast. If the players can do it, your monsters need to do it. Okay? It's just really, really simple. You can't do it any other way. Okay? It's actually really shite for a dungeon master to try to cast a spell and have the players counterspell it. Because now your spellcaster that was trying to cast that spell will probably never get to do anything because they're going to level all their attacks at that spellcaster and they'll be dead before they ever get to take another turn. That is commonly what tends to happen. So yes, I don't agree with that as a way of operating. Always give them that sort of thing. Darkness is actually Nesna's greatest asset, provided the spiders are there. If the spiders are got plenty of webs around and darkness, huge advantage. So you probably always want to lead off with darkness, not invisibility. Anyway, we'll talk about more of that next week anyway. Because we'll be back, same time, and that'll be part 2 of Wave Echo Cave. where we actually do talk about Nesna in a lot more detail. Mac, what do you got here? I've got better at my area-to-area descriptions for characters. So, okay, so let's have a look at some of the descriptions in this book here, this adventure book that we're dealing with. I know there'll be somebody on YouTube, there always is, that says that you shouldn't read out box text. Garbage. It's nice if you can manage to not do that. If you can memorize what basically is going on, that's great, but that's asking way too much. Professional dungeon masters have this view because they run games for people and they charge them money. Okay? And unless you are charging people money, you don't have to do that. You're back, Dynamancer? All good, all good. So, don't feel bad if you read from the text. What I would say is if you're dealing with more than one paragraph or there's a natural cutoff point, it's sometimes better to read out just a few sentences from the box text and stop to see if the players want to ask questions or they want to do something before you read out the rest of it. And if whatever they want to do is actually really needs the rest of the box text to be read out, then do so. But don't let that stop you. If you feel that this is too intimidating to try and memorize something, or you can paraphrase it, you don't have to read it out exactly as it's written, but sometimes it's easier just to read out what is written there in the box text. Now, if you get box text that is really long, like half a page, then there's a problem. Whoever was writing that box text did not think about this. I don't like box text that's really, really long. If it's that long, see if you can break it up into pieces. But again, if that's going to stop you from running the game, then just ignore it. Just ignore them, okay? I hear them say it all the time. There's a couple in particular that have a beef about reading out box text. They're insane people. They really are. Pacing your monologue as a DM is a learning skill. Yeah. So, and you need to breathe. So don't read it out too fast. Try to read it out in a way that it will actually make sense. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, it's just a bit hard. I suppose I could demonstrate that. Could I demonstrate that in my current condition with all the heat that I'm contending with? Okay, area 1. So let's do area 1 of Wave Echo Cave. So I'm going to read out the box text. I'm not going to be too fancy about it. And then I will paraphrase it after. How's that sound? Okay. So box text, area 1, this is the cave entrance. The entrance tunnel leads into a large cavern surrounded by natural pillars of rock and containing 3 stalagmites. In the west part of the cave, behind a column of rock, are 3 bedrolls and a heap of ordinary supplies. Sacks of flour, bags of salt, casks of salted meat, lanterns, flasks of oil, and there's also pickaxes, shovels, and other gear. Amid the supplies, you see the body of a dwarf miner, dead for at least a week. I would stop here. You know there's another paragraph to go, but I'm not going to read it out. Do you know why? I've just told the players there's a whole lot of stuff I might find useful, but then I've then described there is a body. And the first thing they want to do is they want to know more about the body. So they're probably going to want to ask questions, and they're probably going to want to do something. That is kind of your nice natural cutoff point in that box text. So when they say, look, I want to go and check out the body, and you can say, yes, you can do that. Would you like me to continue explaining the location? And then you proceed. So I'll now read out the second paragraph once the players have had a chance to actually engage with me. So one of the things we always do as Dungeon Masters, if we can help it, whether we're reading out box text or paraphrasing box text, is what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves natural points where the players will want to do something, because we need them to do that. So they want to go and check out the body, and I say, yes, that's fine. So I'm going to read out the rest of the information, and you'll let me know what you want to do if you still want to do that. Okay. The northeastern section of the cavern has collapsed, forming a 10-foot wide, 20-foot deep pit. A sturdy hemp rope is tied off around a nearby stalagmite and dangles down the side of this pit, at the bottom of which is a rough-hewn tunnel heading northwest, west, and east. That's it. I'm done. Okay, so I've read out the text, and I've put in a natural breakpoint so my players can actually respond. Now, if I didn't read out the entire thing, how would I paraphrase it? If I knew what it was going to say, and I'd have to read it in advance and have a pretty good idea of how I would shorten this, I would say that you come to the tunnel entrance. It's a large cavern, lots of pillars and stones, and you see a whole lot of supplies everywhere, and then there's also a body on the ground of a dwarf. And, of course, there is a pit or right beside it. Now, that would be paraphrasing. So I said it a lot quicker and faster, but I did leave out a lot of information. Information they will probably ask about, which is fine, because sometimes if you leave out stuff, it's good to get the players to ask questions. Do you know what I mean? So, but again, do not get carried away and listen to silly people who tell you that you should not read out box text. You can use box text. The box text in Lost Mine of Phandelver is actually not that bad. It's actually mostly fine. Maybe the first bit is a little bit long. Okay, Dinomancer, what do you got here? As soon as players realise you're reading out of the text, they tend to not care as much, at least my players. Yes, that can happen, but it's also the way that you read it. Do you know, I read that out a particular way. And if you take your time so you're explaining what's there, that helps. If I had read it out differently, the box text, and I'd read it out this way, the entrance tunnel leads into a large cavern supported by natural pillars of rock and containing 3 stalagmites. In the western part of the cavern, behind the column of rock, is 3 bedrolls, a heap of ordinary supplies, sacks of flour, bags of salt, casks of salted meat. Now you can see what I'm doing. I'm rushing through it because I'm assuming, because the players don't give a shite about the description, that I have to get it done as fast as possible. Will they process any of that? Probably not. Probably not. This is why I say when you read out box text, read it out as if you are trying to communicate that information to their brain. Okay. Mac, what do you got here? I have 7 players, all a mix of those who need description, elaboration, and those who don't. Before a game, I might print out images to pass to the players, characters, okay, to the party, which works if I can find appropriate images. Yes, I used to do that, but it takes so much time, as you know, Mac. Sometimes you can't find exactly what you're looking for too. Dino, roughly, if I speak for longer than 30 seconds without allowing the players to interject, then they tell me to stop, and which is fine. So maybe what you do is, you, as I said, is you read out, if you're going to read from the text, you read out 2 or 3 sentences, which will take you about 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? I've always found that the best way for a dungeon master to read out box text or paraphrase it is to read it in such a way that I will actually get the information into my brain. And speed does not help. And sometimes leaving out too much information can actually cause a lot of confusion and frustration later on as well. So, but I'm of the opinion that leaving out stuff is a good thing because it forces them to ask questions. Anyway, so we've dealt with that. So yeah, I think it's pretty much time for me to tootle off because I am melting. I've got to go to work, and unfortunately I'll be wearing a mask while I'm at work because things got complicated. Anyway, yeah, thank you for hanging out with me, and hopefully you got the information you needed. So thank you to my patrons for supporting me on Patreon. This is where you get the Dungeon Master handout for these lessons that I run for the Lost Mine of Phandelver, plus a lot of other stuff as well. So thank you for supporting me there. Thank you to everybody who took part in the live stream and watched the live stream today live. It does really make a big difference. I also want to thank anybody who's watching the replays and the edited videos and putting up with my shorts. If you're dealing with my shorts, I have to do them. Otherwise, YouTube does not like me very much, apparently. So, yes, thank you very much for doing that. So, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Oh, now can I actually get this thing out of the way? Ah, it's not going to work. Maybe.